Well, welcome to Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell. It's an Inside the Birds presentation. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and joining us every week to break down the tape of the Eagles game is NFL Film senior producer Greg Cosell. He's also the star of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show and the Inside the Birds pregame show. We want to wish everyone a happy new year. And of course, our thoughts are with the great people and the great community of New Orleans. The Eagles, they wrapped up their clinch of the NFC East Sunday. They beat the Cowboys 41-7 at the Link to secure not only the NFC East, but also the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. And Greg, we know the Eagles were playing their backup quarterback and going up against the Cowboys team, also playing a lot of backups and with nothing to play for. So I don't know that we need to get into the weeds on this run and that run. We'll look at some big picture things that happened in the game. But in general, when you watch the tape outside of the lopsided score in the second half, what are some of the things that jumped out to you offensively and defensively that you were looking for?
I mean, obviously with Hurts not playing, I was just curious to see how Kenny Pickett would play, given that I did like him coming out of college. It didn't quite work in Pittsburgh for whatever reason. Obviously, they thought he could be their starter. They drafted him in the first round. So I was sure curious to see how he performed. Obviously, none of us expected him to get hurt and then come out of the game. Defensively, I think you wanted to see how they rebound from probably one of their poorer performances, if not the poorest performance of the season, the week prior. I've always believed in talking to coaches and players through the years, and I think we spoke about this a little bit with the Patreon group the other night, is when teams are good, normally if they play poorly in a particular area, they come back and play pretty well. If a team is bad, it's obviously, if that's a bad area, then hey, that's a different story. But I didn't expect the Eagles defense to come out and have a poor outing. And the thing is, and it's so interesting when we talk to the Patreon group, is that the Eagles, and this is a good thing, for the Eagles and probably for the fans, is they've become so good in many areas that fans point out one play as if, oh my God, what's wrong? The guy ran for 12 yards. And it's funny how that works.
Right.
When a team's good, how that works. But I was curious to see how they'd respond, and I think they responded well.
Adam, this is a perfect kind of game too, where the Eagles, you knew they were going to win and the Cowboys had nothing to play for, where we can ask Greg about maybe certain individuals who are playing more so than normal, instead of like scheme or any individual play by itself. Was there a player, Adam, that jumped out to you that you thought, I can't wait to sort of get Greg's evaluation on this guy or that guy?
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny because Greg was asked about McKee in the with Patreon, and he's right. What did he make? 4 throws?
He threw the ball 4 times.
Yeah. But no, what Greg's great is, because he keeps all of his notes, it's either from his memory or go, guys, I'm going to go back to my notes. Let me find them. And he finds them and he reads the write-up. But I love when you do that, Greg, because then we could think about, okay, Greg will be talking and reading his notes, and I'll go, okay, what did I see at training camp? Okay, I saw that, or I didn't see that. Whatever the case may be. And look, like with McKee, we're fully expecting him to start this game. He could play the whole game. Who knows? We'll see. The coach will have to go through that. But this is an opportunity to see Tanner McKee on Sunday.
Well,
Greg, what kind of bust? What kind of bust in Canton are you expecting Tanner McKee's to look like? Like the hair. Go ahead.
Well, I just pulled up my, because since you mentioned it, I pulled up my evaluation, and I said he will be an interesting evaluation as scouts and personnel people and coaches look to project and transition him to the league. He's a pure pocket quarterback with minimal second reaction outside of structure playmaking ability, yet he is relatively refined and nuanced with his pocket traits and his ability to make the right kind of throw to the right receiver at the right time with precise ball placement to the level you don't see too often in college quarterbacks. So that's what he is. Now, those kinds of quarterbacks can play in the league. I think those guys tend to need to be protected a little more than others. And obviously, the Eagles do have a good offensive line. But just and we can talk further about McKee a little more on a Sunday morning. But just the question you asked, Adam, one guy who jumped out to me, and you probably saw, so people know I do send you guys my notes, so this is not off the cuff. You see my notes. I've been really impressed with Cam Jurgens, and it's kind of his growth. And, I think we expected him to be a good player. I don't think anybody said, oh, no, this guy's not going to be any good, you know. Um, but I really feel that watching this Eagles O-line, that he's just a really, really solid center in this league with a similar kind of Kelsey ability. And I don't want people to think, oh no, Kelsey's a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's not my point.
You
My
mean his
point is
athletic
just
movements?
stylistically,
Mm-hmm.
because they get him out on the perimeter, they
Right.
get him on the move. He can do all those things. So in some ways, they don't really have to change, what they've been doing for the last number of years in terms of the run game. And obviously, we know Barkley can run any kind of run.
Right. How would you, I know this isn't a comparison question based on ranking, because I know we don't do that here, but just based on what you said, what a player is asked to do, Cam Jurgens is asked to use his athletic movements in a
Yep.
certain way. How would you compare to that to how Frank Ragnow is being asked to be used in Detroit's offense, or Creed Humphrey in Kansas City's? Because those are two really good centers that come to mind as well.
I think they're probably more physically strong than
Hmm.
Jurgens. Um, I don't want to say they're more physical because you can be physical, without necessarily being strong,
Right. Right.
because Jurgens is not, he plays physically, he's just not powerful. That's a difference. And by the way, that's a difference with a lot of positions. That's a difference with running backs as well. There's a
Sure.
lot of running backs who run up there really hard and they run physically, but they're not necessarily powerful. Jurgens plays physically. He's just not as powerful, in my view, anyway. And I don't fancy myself to be an offensive line guru or genius, but I think Ragnow and Humphrey are just stronger in terms of their physical traits. But Jurgens is a really good player. And there's a lot of plays this year where he's out on the perimeter or he's up to the second level, and he has great body control and balance on the move. And you don't see that very often with a lot of centers.
Greg, one more question on the offensive line. And I know PFF has Jordan Mailata ranked, graded really high, like one of our highest graded players overall. And you never know who's grading that stuff. So
Right.
for what it's worth, and they don't always see. I wish they would tell you, is it a former coach, former player? You don't know that, but as it were, he's had a good year. We know that. What does he look like to you, just overall throughout the
I
season?
think he's had a better year than last year because last year I thought there were not games, there were too many snaps in which he struggled in pass pro.
Hmm.
And when I say that, I don't mean he had a bad year, like he shouldn't be playing left tackle.
Mhm.
But I think this year he's been better. Those plays have been fewer and far between. I think he's played at a really high level, and we know he's a very good run blocker. He's just a mountain of a man.
Do you
You know
ever
what?
mark when you
Adam,
watch
we did
that?
have that conversation recently. I think it was last week. We talked about how we have said Jordan Mailata's name less this year as
Yep.
far as this was a rough time. There were a couple of edge guys that gave him some issues last year, about 5 or 6 games that
Right.
we could remember. And I
That's
agree with Greg.
correct.
I think he's had a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very fair, Jeff, and you're 100% right. And the film showed that, and I know you guys look at it as well.
Hmm.
But I think this year he's been better overall.
Just wanted to ask you this question though. When you watch Mailata sometimes, because remember, he never played football in his life until 2018. He's come a long way, right? Do you feel like he's just a solid football player, or is he just but like I know you don't put grades out, but you've watched his tape for a number of years. You know he's come a long
Yeah.
way. Where do you see his progression?
I, I mean, I wouldn't say he's Trent Williams, and I wouldn't say he's Tunsil at his best, although Tunsil did not have a great year this year. But I think he's a really solid player, and I think it's mind-boggling to me, doing this for years and watching college players, when I get to the draft stuff, that the guy never played football and this is where he is. I mean, that's really impressive when you think about it. And that speaks to both the coaching and to him as a person, with his character, his approach, his willingness to be coached. Because you're starting, I'm sure, Jeff Stoutland could talk about it far better than I, of course, but you're starting, he's just a ball of clay. I mean, he's nothing. He doesn't know how to do anything.
Could put his helmet on. He had to learn how to put
Yeah,
his
I mean,
helmet
he
on.
doesn't know how to do anything.
Right.
There's almost no, well, maybe a coach views that as a good thing because there's no bad habits, but you're totally starting from scratch.
Hey,
This is
Geoff.
a great discussion on Jordan because I've been thinking about this lately with him. We know he's a great athlete because he played rugby and he ran fast in a straight line and he was a fluid mover for a guy who's 360 pounds. But I don't know, and I think what's yet to be discovered about him.
He's not 360, just so you know.
Well, when he was, I'm just saying. The difference I think Greg would probably acknowledge between Mailata and say the Jason Peterses or the Trent Williams is those guys just have a level of athleticism and a knowledge of how to use their athleticism to their advantage that you just don't see in a lot of human beings, let alone guys who are over 330 or 340. And I wonder if Mailata is still learning how to use his athleticism in that way, or he just not that kind of athlete that we watch for Jason Peters, who would hop into his set in a way Todd Harriman said he's never seen a human being be able to do before. Right. So that's what we're still sort of finding out about Mailata.
And just playing off what you said, it just struck me as you said it, there's different kinds of athleticism.
Yep.
That's the thing.
Yep.
You know, we saw all those clips of him playing rugby, right? Wasn't it rugby?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And you'd see him carrying the ball and running, and you'd go, oh my God, what an athlete. But that's not the kind of athleticism that's necessary to be a pass protector in the NFL. It's a
Right.
different kind of athleticism.
Yep.
So sometimes guys can be athletic in one way. You know, it's just like, think of receivers, guys who, let's say, run 4.3, okay? And you go, wow, but yet they can't get in and out of breaks, you know, at the necessary way to be successful, you know, big time NFL receivers. And then you look at Justin Jefferson, who, you know, may not be as fast as Tyreek Hill. He's not, but yet his ability to get in and out of breaks without shortening his stride, you know, or you know, is remarkable. I mean, there's different kinds of athleticism, and I think we all do this. You know, I include myself in that category. Just when we're talking, obviously, when I start getting into the nitty-gritty with college evaluations, I make these delineations. But I think we just say, "Oh, great athlete," and you know, we just throw that out. You know,
Right.
but there's different kinds of athleticism and movement.
Absolutely. All right. We'll take a look at some offensive clips in a second, including one with Cam Jurgens in it, Craig. But I did want to just finish off on the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett was playing with some bruised ribs or broken
Yep.
ribs. And of course, McKee came in only through a few passes. But with those guys, just tell me what jumped out to you, positive, negative, anything on Pickett and then McKee.
Yeah, we'll start with McKee because there were so few throws. I mean, I think you just saw, and again, it's a very small sample size, so I don't want people to think this is a definitive judgment on McKee.
Mhm.
But I mean, they did obviously throw the two back shoulder fades. One was complete, one was incomplete. You know, that's to me what McKee is. I mean, the touchdown, even the one that was incomplete was just really good coverage. But the one that was complete for a touchdown to Brown was just perfect ball placement. I mean, that's what he is. That's what he'd have to be to play in the league. You know, he's going to have to be a precise pocket quarterback who does all the nuances of the position, the disciplines of the position, the subtleties of it, you know, correctly. But that's what he is, you know, and that's what he'd have to be. And the people that like him, and I know Adam has spoken about, they think very highly of him in the building. I'm sure he's a great guy too, you know, that would probably be the case. But that's who he is. That's what he would have to be to play in this league if he were ever get an opportunity as a starting quarterback.
And Pickett.
Pickett's always been a little bit of an enigma to me since he's been in the league because when he came out with that last year at Pitt, I truly believed that he could be a quality starter. And having said that, I didn't believe he'd be a top five guy, but I thought, you know what, this guy, he had good technique, he had good fundamentals, he made the necessary throws. He didn't have a big gun, so there were some throws that, you know, weren't power throws. That's not his deal. But he was accurate. He had a feel for the game. He had movement ability. And in the NFL, for some reason, the ball placement's been very erratic. I don't think his decision making has been anywhere near as good as it was in college. You know, that often happens with quarterbacks because the game is totally different. So in this particular game, I mean, he was I would say he was okay. I mean, he didn't turn it over.
Right.
He almost threw one pick, which, they called a late hit, but I mean, it was a bad read and he shouldn't have thrown it. You know the play I'm talking about, I'm sure. But, he didn't make any bad throws in that sense.
Hmm.
And so he didn't turn it over, but I don't feel like he plays the game sort of with the precision that he needs to play it with, given the fact that he's not a big armed guy.
Got it. Got it. All right, let's take a look at some of the clips. And Greg, this is the Calcaterra. Everybody knows this play. This is Kenny
Oh yeah.
Pickett to Grant Calcaterra for 34 yards. And I swear some of the commentary I'm sure you're about to say is the exact kind of commentary that we have said all year long about Jalen Hurts as far as bailing a pocket or making a play that you wouldn't normally make, but hey, it wound up being a good play. So you say good play, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of the situation
And
here.
and again, as someone who was taught the position by Bill Walsh, these kinds of plays aggravate me to no end. You know, I mean, no, I mean, because
Explain.
this stuff gets coached.
Right.
I mean, you know,
Yep.
you're dealing with this is 3rd and 8, okay? This was their second possession.
Hmm.
Um, so what the Cowboys decided to do here was they go with a 5-man overload pressure, and they run a concept that Steve Spagnuolo in many ways has made famous, where you have 4 deep, 2 under. It's not quarters, though. It's not taught as quarters. It's kind of a zone match coverage, but it's 4 deep and 2 under. Okay,
Hmm.
that's what the defense is doing here. They're rushing 5 and they're playing kind of 4 deep and 2 under, and it's 3rd and 8. Okay, so you can run this, Geoff, and if you look at the top of the screen, you're going to see because because of a certain kind of coverage, the corner is off up top, and
Hmm.
plus you almost have a natural rub pick element up top. So you'll see Devonta Smith right there. Okay, and look at Pickett. He's looking in that direction.
Hmm.
You got to throw this ball. I mean,
Hmm.
this is the play. You
Yeah.
know, look at
Oh,
you. You got to throw this. He's a yard from the sticks, and he's got room to. This play isn't called for a touchdown. This play's called to get a first down on 3rd and 8.
Right. And it's there.
You got to throw this.
Yep.
But he broke down again. I can't tell you what's in his head, but he took his vision away from that. Now, why? I'm just,
well, by the way, if Jeff runs it, you'll see he actually could have still thrown it to Smith if he didn't break down, as Greg just said. Look at
no
that.
question.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
And then
shoot, he might be able to get it to AJ here at the bottom of the screen because he was looking there
But the
at
thing
that
is,
point.
this was a quick rhythm drop, quick
Right.
timing drop. So these kinds of throws, guys, are not meant to go from one side to
Right.
the other. See, it's
Stick your
almost
foot and throw. Yep.
it's 3-step drop timing. Okay.
Right.
So it's hit your back foot and deliver the ball. So you're
Mhm.
not going from one side to the other side. That's
Yep.
not the way that's taught.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
that I mean, I think anybody who's watching us now can see that Smith is wide open and the
Mhm.
ball should have been thrown. That's the
Yep.
play.
Yep.
That's why they ran that route combination, because there's a natural
Let it
pick.
run. Watch how ridiculous. Like, this is like a miracle play.
And then he just throws it up. And you know what? It's 101. You throw it up, and Calcaterra made a ridiculous one-handed catch.
Mhm.
And hey, it turned out to be 34 yards, and
Yep.
we all get excited. And I think the next play or the play after was the touchdown to Smith, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it was. Hmm. I wanted
Um,
to see the protection here that he also got too, because we've sometimes talked about, hey, if you got a nice little crease up, if you're not going to make the throw, nice job here, by the way, on Jurgens picking up the stunt. Correct? You were talking about that earlier.
yeah, I mean, he's totally secure in the pocket. There's no issue here.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, he's
Wow,
got
that is great protection.
he's
Holy
got some
cow.
out,
Hey,
He
this is
doesn't
the
have to
kind of
run.
stuff
He
when I
can
was
just
talking
climb.
before we showed the play, guys.
Hmm.
That I just, why is he doing this?
Right.
I don't know. I can't
Right.
answer that question.
Right.
Folks,
It
if
should
you
have
watch
been-
this if you're
it should
listening
have
to the
been
pod
pick-
version,
It should have been pitch and catch to Smith for 9 yards and a first down.
yeah, if you're listening to this, trust us, the puck was beautiful. If you're not watching, if you're listening and not watching on YouTube,
Yeah. So that was a play I wanted to highlight because we saw a couple of different things in that. Nice protection, by the way, that we saw there. And I think, Greg, just for anybody and Adam, anybody who says that we don't analyze all quarterbacks fairly. That is the exact thing that we have said about Jalen Hurts at times this year when he's done the same thing, and we're saying it about Kenny Pickett there. So good on that.
Yeah, no,
Um, yeah, yeah. So I think the next play was after that was a much better play, and that was the touchdown, and we'll take a look at that as well.
and
To
remember last week on Sunday we talked. I mentioned it. Isn't Andrew Booth still there?
Yes, you
yes,
did. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I said, because remember, I said they have to go after Andrew Booth if
and he
starting.
started, and he started,
They
and
did. They
he
did.
did not perform particularly well. And it's so funny. He was a second round pick out of Clemson, really good college career. You know, I did his tape. I thought he could be a solid player, and it hasn't turned out. It's sometimes that it's funny how that works.
all
So
right.
anyway, if you want to do the Smith 22-yard touchdown, this was 3rd and 12. And this
Mhm.
ended that second possession. So it was actually the same possession as the Calcaterra 34-yarder.
Right.
So the Cowboys were in nickel. And so what they did here is they showed a 6-man front with a double mug, meaning there's 2 players in the A gap. Okay, this is very common. It's a 6-man front, and they're going to go cover 1 behind it. Cover 1 means that it's man coverage with a single high safety. Okay, that's
Mhm.
what they're going to play here. Okay, now notice that it's this is what we call a 1-by-3 formation, meaning that the tight end is the single receiver to the boundary, and you've got 3 wide receivers to the trip side. Smith is number 3 to trips, meaning he's closest to the formation. Okay, so now because they're playing man, Booth is on Smith because they put Bland on Brown most of the game, so Booth was matched on Smith.
Mhm.
There's a lot of elements to this play. We could let's start with Smith first because I think this is really nuanced, and I
Okay.
think this is the kind of stuff you don't necessarily get to see on TV very much. And I think this is, when people say a guy's a great route runner, that's thrown around a lot, and nobody says what that means. Unfortunately, I've learned that. Believe me, I didn't know that years ago. You have to. I had to learn that. You learn a lot of stuff, but. But watch Smith. He first of all, he knows where he's going. It's almost the concept is almost like a double smash concept to some extent, where you have two
Mhm.
two underneath routes, and they're both in breakers, and he runs the corner route. It's kind of what you'd almost call double smash. But
Mhm.
now go back a little, Geoff, to the beginning of the play, because I think what's really important here, and it might seem like nothing, is look at Smith's initial stem. He angles it ever so slightly inside. Okay. So
Mhm.
look what that does right now to Booth. And
Yep.
it's very subtle, but look how Booth starts to turn. Look right there, perfect freeze, where his right foot goes in front of his left foot.
Mhm.
That's really important because that makes it much harder to turn his body to play the corner route.
Yep.
And then Smith straightens it. Look right there. Look at
Yeah, look how
Booth.
far his feet are apart too. That's hard
Yes.
to
And
rotate.
then
Yep.
what Smith does is instead of immediately running to the corner, he straightens his stem to make it seem like he's going to run vertically. And
Mhm.
now Smith is kind of caught. He's not sure what this route is right now.
Right.
And then Smith just, takes it to the corner and beats him. I mean, he beats him badly. It's not even
Yep.
close. But
Wow.
that's just the nuance, the little details of route running when you say someone is a really good route runner.
It's a
Instead
good
of just
throw
running
too.
straight and running to the corner,
Mhm.
he did these little things that got the corner, Booth, to just turn his body, widen his feet, kind of get his feet stuck for a second. I mean,
Mhm.
all those things are so, so important. And that's why he's open by so much.
And Pickett's subtle pocket movement. Watch him step up and through
Yep.
the
Well,
pressure.
he had to do the subtle pocket movement
Yep.
because we'll
That was.
get to that.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
get
I
to that
just
one
bringing it
second.
up. Just
I
Yeah.
bringing it
also
up.
I also think nice play design because the route, the rub that you were talking about, Greg, it took AJ Brown's defender. I think that might be Bland. It took him
It
and
took him
just
over the
created a little
top.
traffic there,
Yeah.
you know?
It took him over the top.
Yep. And it created
Yeah.
just a little bit more traffic for Booth, who, like you said,
This was the play, by the way. There's so many elements to this play. So
uh-huh.
you have this from the end zone, Geoff?
Yep, let's go to it.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
go to the end zone. Because I want to point out before we get to Pickett, and I pointed this out to the Patreon group on Tuesday night. This is Gainwell. This is phenomenal because the
Hmm.
two A gap players are going to stunt. Okay, you see this a lot in the NFL. Out of this double mug, there's stunts because
Hmm.
The way 99.9% of the time double mug is blocked is the center takes one guy and the back steps up and takes the other. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a stunt inside screws them up. But I mentioned this the other night and how important it is if you just run this. Look what Gainwell does. Instead of staying back there and potentially getting in Pickett's way, look at him
Yep.
go up and get it.
Yep.
Okay.
He doesn't
So
wait
now,
for it. Yep.
now he's totally not, Pickett's clean. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really good by Gainwell. Really good. That's
By
the
the
way
way,
it's taught.
this
All
is
right.
a
So now let's get to
this
Pickett.
stunt you're talking about with the double mug. This is a staple, correct, of the Mike Zimmer defenses of the past.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He's a
Yeah.
he's always, I mean, you go back to when not everybody was doing double mug. He was
Right.
doing a ton of it in Minnesota.
By the way, Gunther,
Or Cincinnati, actually Cincinnati with
Yep.
Paul Gunther as his
Yep.
lieutenant.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're back together.
Yeah.
All right. And
All
then
right. So
of
now
course, mhm.
here's another thing that kind of bothers me. Okay. And again, I'm thinking like Bill Walsh now.
Okay.
When a quarterback drops back, okay,
Mhm.
the term that's used is you have to drop back on the midline. You drop straight back. That's the term that's used. You drop back straight on the midline. Okay.
Mm.
Now, why is Kenny Pickett? He drifts to his
Drifting.
left.
Yeah, he drifts toward the pressure. That's a good point,
So he
Greg.
creates. This is one of the few snaps where Mailata is not phenomenal. Okay.
Right.
So he creates his own pressure here, and then and look at his body position.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. He didn't need to do that.
So now he fortunately is able to climb and reset his throwing platform
That's nice. That climb was
That-
beautiful.
and make a good throw.
Yep.
But there was no reason for him, guys. Why did he drift? He
Right.
drifted off the midline. There's no reason for that.
Greg, did he do that in Pittsburgh a lot?
With the
I mean,
Steelers, you mean? Not in
Steelers.
college.
Yeah, not Pitt. Yeah, my bad. Steelers.
Yeah, he's been a little out of whack fundamentally, I think, in the NFL, and it's one reason why, it hasn't worked.
By the way, not only does Gainwell do what you said, Greg, as far as getting in the right position, but sometimes you see guys still get run over or
Oh no, he doesn't get run over.
He really puts himself into. Is that who's 35? Is that
Liufa.
Luffy?
The
Yeah, I mean
rookie.
that's
Notre
really
Dame
good
linebacker.
right there.
Yeah.
I love it. This is great. I mean, this is really good. Great engagement, great balance there, leverage, everything by Gainwell. And then there's the.
I mean,
It's a really good throw, by
he
the
ends
way.
up making a great throw.
Yeah.
You can't take that away from him. He put it in the perfect spot. It was a great throw.
Absolutely.
I guarantee that if that was in practice, Bill Walsh would tell him to do it again, because that's not the way to do it. You don't drift. See, it's funny and it was cleaned up this year in New England, but Drake May had that issue at times in North Carolina. But you can clean that up. That can be coached.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one, Greg, is a Saquon Barkley run. We can't do this without Saquon Barkley. He had a nice, I believe, 15-yard run. In the
So this
half.
was late in the second quarter. This was a Jurgens play because this was a really good, outstanding movement block by Jurgens on Kendricks.
I feel like the other angle would be better, but we'll watch it from this angle real quick too.
They're in double mug again.
Yep, you see it right there. Two linebackers. Yep, double mug.
So, I mean, this was just. So this ended up being a zone run, basically. This is a zone run. It's kind of, it's not true outside zone. It'd probably be a little more mid to
Right.
But anyway, look at Jurgens here. This is what I'm talking about the body control and the balance. This is hard to do now. I mean, he's a 300+ pound man, and look at him stay with him. He never loses his balance.
Yep.
He's blocking him. This is 10 yards down the
10
field.
yards. Yep. Absolutely.
And I know Kendricks, theoretically gets involved in the tackle, but it's 12, 15 yards down the field.
Right.
That's a plus for Jurgens. Stoutland's going to give him a plus on this play, not a minus.
Sure.
This is really, really good.
I think the point you make that maybe fans don't see on TV or understand is what you just said about being close to 300 pounds, a little over 300 pounds, and being able to move your body. He's going to the right, but then has to pivot to the left. That's hard. That's dancing bear type stuff.
Exactly. And remember, he's a
phenomenal
former tight end. So he can move.
This is phenomenal. See, it's also, it's his core, and I know they work a lot in the Eagles facility on the core with all players, but O-linemen in particular. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, look at it, he never loses his posture, his stature, his,
Mm-hmm.
everything. And that all comes from a strong core. Look, we all know that when, as old guys, we go to the gym and we hate doing core exercises, but core exercises are so important,
Yeah.
Yep.
because they help so much with your balance.
Yep.
That's the thing. You don't think of it that way, but that's where a lot of we don't have to do this kind of stuff in our daily lives, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff that allows you to be really balanced. So like if you get out of a chair, you don't lose your balance for a
Right.
little
Mhm.
bit of, half a second.
Right.
This is phenomenal by Jurgens.
By the
I'm
way, Geoff, who
Uh-huh.
knew we would get a lesson on core, your strength and your core from
Hey, from
Cosell?
Greg Cosell. That's right. By the way, also Jahan Dotson. Congrats. Nice job. Nice job
Yeah,
blocking on the
yeah.
perimeter there.
you got in the way.
Trivia question, everybody. What NFL running back leads the NFL in yards before contact?
Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, well, this is a good reason why. I
Yeah,
mean, he
exactly.
doesn't get much easier
And
than
by the
that for
way,
him.
that's not a negative on a running back. People
No,
make it out
No,
to
it's
be.
positive.
That's a
No.
positive for the offensive line.
of
Yeah,
course.
Greg. In fact, I think you told us that there were a number of runs where you felt he didn't get touched like within like 4 or 5
Oh,
yards.
yeah, there's been a ton of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Right.
Jurgens has really stood out to me, and I've enjoyed watching him
Good.
because he's just a fun guy to watch because the way he moves.
All right, Greg, let's transition to the defense. Why don't you tell us what might have jumped out to you from a vantage point of well, let's start with the front line, the defensive front of the Eagles. Anybody jump out to you?
Um, I thought Williams had some really good snaps against Tyler Smith, who's a really good left guard. I mean, again, I'm not studying Tyler Smith every snap, all season long, but I think, and you guys, Adam, you may know this, I think Tyler Smith's considered a pretty good left guard in this league.
Yes. Oh yeah. He's been an
Yeah.
unbelievable story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did him coming out of college. He was a left tackle. No one thought he could step right in year one and start at left guard, and he did for the Cowboys and did well. I just thought that Milton Williams had some really dominant snaps early on. Um, and I mean, you saw it on the first play of the game, the short stroke power. He jarred Smith, which resulted in Dowdle bouncing outside, and then they tackled him for a 1 yard gain. And, that's what you want on the first play. You want to establish a physical presence. We talked with the Patreon group. I thought that Trotter, he played the third and fourth possessions, and I thought he flashed. I thought he showed up.
Mm-hmm.
You can see his movement. You can see that he's got a good sense of a natural feel for key and diagnose. I thought he played off some blocks well with his hands. That's what you're concerned about coming out because he was only 6 feet 228, and obviously you're concerned about his ability to use the old school term stack and shed. But I thought he showed up. I was, and again, maybe I'm biased because I loved his college tape, and so I was really looking at him carefully. But I thought he flashed.
I want to say, let me say this about Milton Williams, Greg. I think we've probably talked about him almost every
Every
show,
week.
and it's because you are the one. Either we bring it up or you bring it up. You would say, "Hey guys, can I talk about Milton Williams?"
Mm-hmm.
This guy, you started it really, Greg, 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and you're just
It's all based
what
on
the tape
tape,
tells
Adam.
you.
You know that. I'm
Yeah,
not
it's all
making
what the
this
tape
up.
tells you.
Sure.
You've been look. He's probably been one of the most consistent players on defense over 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Fourth year.
he's just not an explosive athlete the way we think of, those guys. But I
Sure.
remember talking with Fran Duffy. We both watched him
Yeah,
coming out of
right.
Louisiana because Fran,
Yeah,
and I talk all because he does a ton and he does a phenomenal job. He's as good as
sure.
it gets. You guys
Yep.
know that.
Yep.
And he does great work, with the draft. And I remember the year he came out, he told me, he said, "Hey, I don't want to tell you anything, but just watch this guy from Louisiana." I hadn't watched him yet, because that's what we do a lot because, we don't want to
Yeah.
prejudice one another.
Sure.
And then I watched Milton Williams and I gave him a shout back and said, "I really like this guy's tape a lot." And
Mm-hmm.
he can play both D end, he can play D tackle. I said, because of where he played, he's probably not going to be a top 50 pick, but this guy's going to play in the league and be a solid player. And
Yeah.
that's exactly the way it's turned out.
It's funny. The only reason I didn't cut a clip of Milton Williams for this show is because I think in almost every show we've done, I've had one of Milton
Yes.
Williams.
Yeah.
So wanted to shine the light on somebody else.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
and
that
obviously,
definitely jumped out.
look, the Gardner Johnson interception return, Rush didn't recognize the coverage, and it was, it was a good play, no question. I'm not knocking the play,
Mhm.
but it was more a bad Rush play than a great Gardner Johnson play. But hey, you know what? When the ball's thrown to you, Darius Butler talks about this all the time. If the ball's thrown to you, you got to catch it.
That's right. And we've seen the Eagles not catch that ball quite a bit this year. So it was nice for them to finally secure a turnover when they needed it. In fact, Greg, why don't we not waste time and look at the play anyway?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There was
So,
Greg, there was some sort of, I don't know, an argument, conversation about what kind of defense the Eagles were in, whether it was one robber, one rat, match zone. And Vic Fangio said it was, he was not in robber coverage. So
no, it's
it was more
not.
of a pass off. Right.
No.
So let's explain how
It's
that
not.
happened and unfolded.
Robber is normally talked about when it's a back-end player who drops down.
Drops down,
That's a
right.
robber. This
Right.
was not the case.
Right.
Vaughn was the initial free underneath defender, but he's not a robber.
Right.
So what happened was they're in nickel and they're in cover one. Again, cover one meaning it's man coverage with a single high safety. Vaughn's the initial free underneath defender. Okay. So what's going to happen here is um, um, he ends up matching. Gardner Johnson is on the tight end Ferguson here just to start the play because they don't know exactly what the routes are going to be. But as soon as Ferguson goes hard inside, what happens is they just switch responsibilities. Okay. So Bond, and this is done, they know this before. This is coached. This is not just, oh, let me jump in here and I'll pick him up.
Right.
You know, it's not random.
Right.
You know, it's so you'll see that this happens. So boom, he breaks inside, Barnes gets him. So all that happens is they switch responsibilities. That
Right.
frees up Gardner Johnson now.
Yep. So he
Okay.
becomes.
He's no longer playing man on Ferguson. Bond is.
Here's the man matchup, and then
There you
here's
go.
CJ.
And he's now free. So Rush did not recognize this. He saw this pre-snap. He saw Gardner Johnson matched on Ferguson. He saw Bond inside, and he's thinking, okay, Gardner Johnson, and everything else about the play. If you go back to the beginning, it says man 1,000%. Because look at all the corners, including the nickel Degene. It's all press. They're all man. There's a single high safety. So Cooper Rush right now says cover one. That's what this play is.
Right.
So he says, and Gardner Johnson, who normally matches the tight end, because Blankenship rarely ever does that, he's thinking he's got the tight end. So right now he's thinking, okay, I'm gonna throw the inside slant route to Cooks, I believe. That's Cooks, right?
Yep, correct.
Cooks.
Yep.
He thinks he's gonna throw, the inside slant route to Cooks.
Yep. So
And you know what? And you know why he's thinking that? Because it's 3rd and 3. So he just wants to get a first down.
Right to the sticks. Yep. It's right at the sticks.
And so he doesn't recognize that they switched and that Gardner Johnson is now sitting right there.
Yep.
Sees it and closes.
By the way,
They got him.
by the way, Cooper Degene right now is at the 31.
Oh, yeah.
CJ is at the 34.
Well, he's faster than Gardner Johnson.
Oh my God! Look at that!
Watch this.
Look at this! Woo. Look at Cooper run, Cooper run.
Wow.
That's pretty good right there.
It is. Wow. You can really see it on
By
that.
the way, this kind of thing is very endemic to Vic Fangio. Believe it or not, I can remember when he was with Denver a few years ago, and Dak Prescott threw an interception. They did the same kind of pass, carry and pass thing, and Dak threw an interception. He thought he had C.D. Lamb wide open on the dig ball, but they ended up passing off a route, and it was actually Caden Stearns, who he's not with Denver anymore, but Caden Stearns made the interception because they passed it off in a similar fashion. That's kind of part of the Vic Fangio defense.
Greg, we had Clay Harbor on with us, Adam and I did, for a Chalk Talk session with our Patreon folks. And I sort of reminded him about when you two guys would do the show and watch the tape last year about the difference between watching how slow and lethargic the Eagles secondary could be last year and they were aging. They just didn't have the speed and they didn't have CJ, they didn't have Cooper DeJean, they didn't have Quinyon Mitchell. They had guys like Byard, guys like Roby, guys like Bradbury. And just in that run back alone, you can see how much more dynamic the athletes that the Eagles have in the secondary to click, to close, to pursue, to cover, and to tackle. It's just my point. It's like how much more dynamic they are. That was the big, because you were really one of the first people last year when people were trying to figure out what was wrong with the Eagles secondary to say, yeah, well, yes, they're not covering correctly, but they're also just a slow back end from linebacker to corner
Yeah.
to safety.
Older.
It's hard to play, it's hard to play in this league without some kind of speed. I mean, these are athletes now.
Right.
It's just hard. I mean, even on offense, we talked about years ago, Adam, you'll remember this
Oh
really
yeah.
well when the Eagles were really slow. I get this all the time with the 49ers. They don't really have, we'll see what Ricky Pearsall ends up being in the league, and he had a really good game the other night, but he's a rookie who basically had no training camp, because of his unfortunate, tragic situation. But the Niners have zero speed, you know, and it's hard to play. It's hard to play with no speed.
Right. All right. All right. So the Eagles gave up another low red zone touchdown, which I believe we talked about last show. So I wanted to bring to light their latest one. And this, I think, Greg, I think you even said it on the Patreon. It wasn't like the coverage was terrible, but it was there. It was just a nice throw by and play by the Cowboys here.
Are you talking about the Tolbert 4-yard touchdown?
This is the Tolbert
Yes.
4-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is your basic, you got the receiver down below. He's the boundary X off the motion by Ferguson. So
Mhm.
what a lot of teams do in this kind of situation is they throw fade balls. Well, Ferguson, I guess, is going to return motion, but
Yeah.
he's still the X receiver because Ferguson's off the ball.
hmm
So yeah, Ferguson matched on Mitchell. Yeah, see again, it's like Mitchell's given up a couple of plays, and all of a sudden, oh, Mitchell stinks. I mean, the guy's a rookie. Corners give up plays in this league. That's
Right.
just the way it works. And this was not terrible coverage by any means.
No. Plus, when he's at this point, he doesn't know. I think you also can you say Tolbert did a nice job with the stem, not disguising immediately where he was
Well,
going?
go back for a quick sec.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now, as soon as Ferguson goes in return motion,
hmm
and Mitchell can see that out of the corner of his eye. He
hmm
doesn't have to be looking at Ferguson. He has to worry now because he doesn't know Ferguson's going to then go back and cross the formation or block. He doesn't know that.
Right.
So, because if Ferguson immediately releases vertically, he
hmm
loses his help because the safety, and I think that's Gardner Johnson, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah,
Yep.
he would be involved in the coverage on Ferguson. So right
Sure.
now, Mitchell is worried about a two-way go. He could be running a slant or he could be running
Right.
a fade. So he can't overplay one or the other.
Right.
So that's why that's why he stays square. He
hmm
can't turn
Oh
one
wow.
way or the other because he doesn't know what it's going to be.
Right. And look, he's there.
That's a
I mean,
really
it's a
good throw
good,
too.
he's
Yeah,
there.
it's a good
It's just
throw.
nice throw, nice catch.
Yep.
Good
Yep.
throw, good catch.
Nothing to worry about. Yeah. Nothing
Yeah.
really.
It's the NFL. That happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Gardner Johnson. He's
Yeah.
following the motion. Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
Gardner Johnson's responsible. It's man coverage.
right.
So like I said, Mitchell doesn't know what Ferguson's going to do. If Ferguson were to release on a stem, vertically,
hmm
then Gardner Johnson's got to play him.
Right.
So, therefore Mitchell has to play the possibility of a two-way go.
Right. Right. So we also saw, Greg, Quinyon Mitchell was beat deep by Mingo down the left sideline, but it was a bad throw. It was a bad track,
Yeah.
and it was third down. The Eagles got a little
Let her
lucky
go.
there. Do you see over the last 2 weeks that teams are trying maybe to take some shots on Mitchell because they think in certain third down situations he's either squatting or playing a different leverage? Or is that hard to tell from just a couple weeks of tape?
I think that's hard to tell how teams think about it.
Yeah.
Obviously the Eagles, they do play man, but they play a lot of zone as well. So in zone coverage, corners play a certain technique, and sometimes balls are caught in front of them, and it doesn't mean they played it poorly. I mean I could show you that, 200 times every week where
Mhm.
guys are playing zone and their body position is such that, they're essentially giving up that throw. Now, you don't want to give it up as a 20-yard gain, but if you give it up as an 8-yard gain, hey, that's the coverage.
Got it.
You know,
Okay, last one we'll look at is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. The rookie gets in. I
Mhm.
think it was the third series that he entered the game, and Vic talked about, that was the plan from the start was to, rotate, well, sort of rotate, but or half and half, whatever you want to call it, but
right.
get Burks out because they're both on special teams, and he didn't want to use both. But I think the hidden thing, Greg, is he wanted to also get Jeremiah Trotter on the field, right, Adam? And you know that. I mean, we've known
Oh, yeah.
this kid's been doing well since training camp.
He had it behind the scenes very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this the delayed draw?
It is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, this is the Dowdle draw
The,
here.
the delayed draw. Yeah, this is
Yep.
one where, and if you run this where I talked about the stack and shed, I think he
Yep.
used his hands and played off Hoffman's block,
Yep.
and got involved in, and Bond made a play. It was part of this as well, as if memory serves me correctly.
I believe
But
so.
but I like the way Trotter reacted to it. He saw it, he
Right
came
here.
up, he didn't sit and wait. He
Yep.
used his hands, played off, and got right involved. I mean, that's what you
Hmm.
want to see.
Yep. You got to rip all it is an old school term now. I don't hear it as much, but it's stack,
Stack and
shed,
shed.
and then tackle. Yeah,
Yeah.
right in the hole.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, given
Hmm.
the way the run game has sort of reinvented itself this year in the
Yeah.
NFL, you might
Hmm.
start hearing that term more when people are evaluating linebackers now.
That's a good
Because,
point.
when all these teams that run the ball, particularly on first down, I mean, and a lot of these teams are in the playoffs, you're going to have to line up and play the
Well,
run game.
and if Pete Carroll gets a head coaching job, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Eagles, and we'll get into this if it becomes that, but if the Eagles play Green Bay in the first week of the playoffs, they're going
Hmm.
to have to buck up and they're going to have to stop Josh Jacobs, because you know what? They give him the ball on first down, and he's kind of the foundation of their offense.
Yep.
Everybody wants to talk quarterbacks, 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 but there's always it's not surprising that Jordan Love hasn't thrown a pick in 7 games, and that he hasn't thrown as many balls. And, I mean, this is what happens. You run
Hmm.
the ball.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
taking nothing away from Lamar Jackson's year, he's had statistically one of the greatest seasons ever by a quarterback in the history of the game,
Hmm.
with 39 touchdowns and 4 picks, and could well win the MVP. And I don't think anybody would argue if he did.
Right.
But, the last number of weeks, he's thrown like 15 balls and 21 balls. And,
Mhm.
I mean, this is, they run the ball.
Yeah. By the way, there's your point on Baun getting off the block of Jake
Yep.
Ferguson right there too.
Yep.
Nice job. And I thought, the other linemen did a good job of keeping the Eagles D line cleared here. They almost reset the line of scrimmage. If these linebackers don't get off
Hmm.
those blocks, this could have been a bigger run
Yep.
or a one-on-one for Reed Blankenship to have to make about 10 yards down the field.
Yeah. That's not
Yeah.
what you want.
No, not at all. So good job. And I have a feeling, guys, we will be seeing a lot of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. on Sunday against the
Oh,
Giants.
yeah. My
Exciting.
guess is he might play the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. So good stuff there. I think this was a really fun one because we got into broader conversations. And I have a feeling, as we've already discussed, next week we'll be doing the same thing and previewing the Packers because this
Oh yeah.
upcoming game against the Giants, it's not really about the tape. It's more about the Eagles and their readiness to compete for a Super Bowl as they enter the playoffs. So that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell, of course, on Inside the Birds. For Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching, everybody.